Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Wine. Welcome back to art class. Today we're going to be starting to create our imaginary pet from clay. So today you will get a large piece of clay. You will also be working from either your animal drawing or your animal painting. And you will also have the other clay tools that we've been using when we've been practicing with clay the past few weeks. So let's get started. The first thing that you have to think about is you have to think about what kind of shapes you used when you were drawing or painting your animal, and you have to think about how you can make those shapes 3D. So when I look at my animal, I see that my animal has different parts. I remember I have my head, so I'm going to pull off a piece of clay to be my animal's head. I also see that I have a large body, so I'm going to pull off a piece of clay to be the body. I know the body is bigger than the head, so I need to make sure that that chunk is a little bit bigger. And I see I have the big tail, and I might want to save some other small pieces of clay to be the pet's legs. Okay? Once I have my clay into some different pieces, then I have to think about how I can start to make those different 3D shapes. So when I see the cat's head is a circle, I can look at my form sheet and I see that the form that looks like a 3D circle is a sphere. So I can start by taking that piece of clay and I just want to roll it out on my hands or on my canvas cloth so that it's a circle shape. Once I have that sphere, then I can take that sphere and I can just set it aside. The next shape that I see is I see this big oval for the body. So again, I go back to my form sheet and I say, well, what form looks like an oval? None of them really look like an oval. A sphere is kind of like an oval, and a cylinder kind of reminds me of an oval. So what if I took my large piece of clay, what if I started rolling it out like a sphere? So again, round like a ball. And I know that an oval is sort of longer than it is perfectly around. So what if I took my sphere and then I kind of rolled it back and forth in my hands, kind of like I would start to make a cylinder, but instead of tapping the edges to make them flat, what if I just sort of left them round? And then again, I can start to sort of experiment and say, okay, the head sits on there. Could I put my head on here, and would that look kind of like a cat on its body? And I think it would, so I'm going to set those two pieces aside. Then I look at the big shape for the tail. Remember, my imaginary pet was a cat with a turkey tail. And when I look at these shapes, I know that a tail isn't really round like a sphere. It's more kind of flat, like it's flat and sticks up, almost like a semicircle. So I could take my clay and I could roll it out, and then I want to flatten it out like a slab. Remember, I don't want it to be too thin. And I could start to think, could that stick on like a tail? It could. Maybe because I want it to be more like a semicircle, maybe that's where I could come in with one of my clay tools, and maybe I could sort of cut that piece off a little bit on the bottom like it's a semicircle. So I've got my head, I've got my body, and I've got my tail. I think that's starting to work. So those are the main pieces. I can come back later and add the legs. When I look at the form of the legs, I know the legs are kind of long and round. So I think the legs would probably be best if I made them out of cylinders. They need to not be quite as long as the body. And I know that I don't want those cylinders to be too skinny. So whatever pieces I'm making, I can figure out how those are going to get attached. I can make all of those pieces and sort of set them aside as I make them. Then, once I'm ready, I know that I need to attach my pieces together. I'm going to take any of my leftover clay and I'm just going to ball it up in case I need it later. And now I'm ready to take all my forms and attach them. So remember, how can I put two pieces of clay together? How can I attach them? There are different steps. The first step is scoring or scratching the surface. So I can use a fork or a clay tool, and if I know I want to put the head on the body, I'm going to scratch that surface. I'm going to scratch the head surface where I'm going to attach it. And that's the first step. Then the second step is adding the slip. Remember, the slip is really just like watered down clay, and it acts as a glue when I'm putting my pieces together. So I can use an old paintbrush. I'm just going to get some slip on the brush, and then I'm going to paint slip where I want to attach those two pieces together. So now I've got slip on both pieces. And then my last step, or my next to last step, is to just press those pieces together and to smooth it with my fingers. So I'm going to take the head, I'm going to push it onto the body. I'm going to press those pieces together, and then I can take my fingers and I really want to smooth those pieces out. If I need to use a little bit of water later to really make that texture smooth, I can do that. But the most important thing is I want to make sure that my head is not going to fall off my body. So I'm really going to stick it on there. Remember, if your fingers get a little bit messy, it's okay. We'll use wipes at the end of the class to clean ourselves up. So I've got my head on my body now, and I know it's going to stay. And then I'm just going to continue to do that for all the rest of my pieces. So if I want to attach my tail, what's the first step? That's right, I'm going to score. Then after I've scratched that surface up, what do I do next? I apply the slip like glue. And then finally, I'm going to press the pieces together and smooth them out with my fingers. I'm going to continue following those steps until I have attached all of my pieces of my animal. I'm not worried about any of the details this week. I'm going to have plenty of time to do those details later. Today is all about making my different forms, and if I have enough time, attaching those forms together. At the end of class, whether or not you're finished, we're going to be taking all of our pieces and you're going to put them on your tray with a wet sponge to keep our clay nice and moist. And we're going to put our sculptures in the bag and zip the bag so we can have it to work on next week. I hope you have a wonderful week. And until next time, keep on creating.